I said to the divine, "Am I dead?" And the voice says, "Yes, you're dead. It's time for you to come home." I'm swept across this vast space, and I see our whole universe being created by the light itself. I see the structure of the love light functioning in the now, making all things exist. I see the earth. I see all people on the earth in live time. I see golden light inside all of their hearts. I see that nobody can see this but me. I see bad people, who do terrible things. They have this light inside of them. I see people who do good things. They have this light inside of them. There's no exceptions to this. Everybody is made of the same divine original goodness. And it's not just human beings. It's everything that there is in the entirety of the universe. And I can see it in existence.
Well, hello, Peter Panagore. Welcome to the show. I am truly honored by you joining me and looking forward to our conversation. How are you feeling today?
I'm doing great, Brad. Thank you for having me today.
Well, thanks for joining. I got to tell you, every week we bring you powerful stories about life after death, awakening, and what it means to be human. And if that resonates, you'll love what's coming. Today, I'm joined by Peter Panagore, a near-death experiencer, mystic, storyteller, and ordained minister. Peter first died on a frozen mountainside in British Columbia, where he encountered the divine in a realm of overwhelming love and light. That experience, shared in his best-selling book, Heaven is Beautiful, transformed his life, but it wasn't the end of his journey. Years later, Peter died a second time, and this time from a heart attack. And again, he was given a choice, and again, much to his own surprise, he chose to come back. Today, we talk about both of these profound moments and the space in between. The silence, the struggle, the integration, the mystical path, and the call to live with heaven in the now. This is a conversation about radical honesty, spiritual depth, and the mystery that continues to unfold long after the light. I hope it stirs something deep within you. Welcome, Peter.
Well, Brad, thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Well, great. You know, I love your story. I've heard it so many times. I really want to dig into the couple of NDEs and the OBE and really jump into some questions after sort of the post-NDE and what's really happened in your life and how you're, changing and healing the minds of the world one soul at a time. So how does that sound to you?
Sounds great.
And we hand the story right over to you.
My first near-death experience happened when I was 20 years old, and I was a college student, national student exchange, and I didn't want to go back for spring break to my family. I had some family issues going on, and I wanted to stay away. And so I found a way to go on a 10-day backcountry skiing, mountaineering expedition in the winter in snow caves. And so there was a guy who was going on this trip, and he was looking for a partner to go with. We checked each other out, went on a little weekend snow kind of expedition to the Jackson Hole. And then we decided we were compatible, so we were off on this 10-day trip. The first part of the trip was wonderful. We skied into the deep backcountry of British Columbia to a place called Mount Assiniboine, lived in snow caves, crossed avalanche areas, had high adventure, no danger, came out, going to do an ice climb. And I'd been a mountain climber, rock climber, rope guy, sheer faces, no fear of heights, but I'd never ice climbed before. This is a new experience for me. And so I came up with all the gear that I needed almost. I came up short one axe. So I had one axe, I needed two. And instead of the second axe, I had a hammer significantly shorter, not made for the job, but possible to use for the job. And then I talked Tim, my partner, into doing this climb, this 3-pitch climb with me using an axe and a hammer. He had just finished his certification as an ice climb leader the season before. So he knew what he was doing. I knew how to climb sheer faces and knew how to use ropes, but I talked him into letting me do this climb with a hammer and an axe because I was like, I can do this, I'm 20 years old. And I did do it. The problem with the climb was that my equipment slowed me down significantly. I had to continue to grip the hammer the whole time. I couldn't let go of it. An axe you can let go of and hang on a strap and relax. your forearm, but I couldn't do that with the hammer. I had to hold it the whole time, which meant I burnt out my forearms, which meant I was going slower. And the stride of the swing of the axe was significantly shorter on the hammer side, which meant that the entire climb, I was climbing a shorter distance on each swing than everybody else. There were other teams on the ice that day. So that's just the prelude. By the time we got to almost to the top, we already knew that we were in trouble, because the sun was beginning to set and we still had to finish the climb, and we couldn't turn around and go down. You have to climb up and then do the rappels. That's just the way the sport works. It's not a rule. It's the way that it functions. So by the time we got to the top of the climb, all the other teams had left. The sun set, the temperature dropped about 30 degrees, and hypothermia began to set in immediately. So all of my muscles were pulsating independent of each other, and I knew that we were going to die. I knew earlier that we were at great risk. By the time we were seated in this place in the dark, trying to haul up the rope, and hypothermia became violent shivers, that we were in serious, grave danger of our mortality. And that we discussed staying where we were, but we decided that if we stayed where we were going to die, because we were both already way too cold to endure an entire night without food and without extra clothes. And so we decided our best and only chance was to fight our way off the mountain in the dark. And I'm going to spare you all of the trauma that went along with this. It was a terrible night. I was absolutely terrified. One of the things I learned about Tim was that he kept his head level in dangerous situations. We had a few dangerous situations the week before. They weren't life-threatening, but they were dangerous. He kept his level head. I kept my level head. I could trust him with my life. He trusted me with his life. And so we decided that we would make this traverse, repel to the bottom in the dark on a sheer cliff to try to save our lives. All night long, the temperature kept dropping. All night long, we were using up our physical reserves of energy. All night long, we were staying warm because we were using up our physical reserves. So as the temperature dropped and we were expending the energy to stay warm, we were depleting our supply of energy. And so we were always fighting against this. Will we make it down to the bottom before we run out of energy, before we freeze to death? And frostbite was biting deeply into us. Our fingers and our feet, and my eyes felt like they were freezing, and it was difficult to speak because my muscles and my jaw and my tongue were so cold that it was difficult to move them. And we had to absolutely focus on everything that we were doing with a strength of mind while we were compartmentalizing our fear in order to make sure that every motion that we had didn't endanger our life by slipping and falling off this sheer cliff, because we weren't attached to anything but each other. Terrible, terrifying night. We finally get to the final rappel. We're about 100, 150 feet up in this position. There are pins in the mountain with rings and carabiners and straps. And so we're strapped into the mountain. It's a practice spot for climbing and rappelling. So we were safe from falling. But our hypothermia was advanced. I eventually went through the final stages, which is what killed me. But before that happened, Tim was to my left, I was to the right. I had the rope. I tied it off to my harness. I took the other end. I threw it out around this corner because we had descended down a crag around the corner of this ledge. And when I pulled on the rope, it jammed somewhere up above. The rope got stuck on the first yank. I couldn't get it free, and now we couldn't ascend and we couldn't descend, and all I could do was try to pull the rope free. But every time I pulled on it, it got tighter and tighter and tighter. So we were now knowing that we were going to die where we were. I knew that this was it. And I wasn't spending any energy talking to Tim. He wasn't spending any energy talking to me. Our reserves were extremely low. And I had this realization that I was not going to make it. And when that happened, this peace came over me. I went from fighting for my death, fighting to prevent my death, to accepting that I was going to die. And when that happened, I became very peaceful. And I started thinking about God. I started thinking about my family. And I began to fall asleep. I'd smack my head on the rock. I'd stand back up, smack my head on the rock, stand back up. And I stood back up this last time. And I've left out a ton of stuff, all of which is you can hear about in other videos or in the book. It's trying to get to what you really want to hear about. But I needed to help people understand what a desperate situation this was, and that we had no way to save ourselves. And there was nobody going to come and get us. So I stood up this last time after falling asleep, and I had this peripheral vision of a circle of darkness around my eyesight, tunnel vision. And this tunnel vision began to collapse very rapidly. And I thought that I was falling asleep, but I had never seen this experience before. I didn't understand it. I was confused. And I thought, I must be falling asleep, but this is weird. And as it closed down, and when it went to blackness, I thought, I'm going to be falling asleep. But I didn't fall asleep. Instead, I woke up. It goes to blackness, and then I'm awake. And I'm thinking, I thought, why am I conscious? And I was standing, and I knew logically that I couldn't be standing if I was asleep. I must have fallen, but I felt like I was standing, and I felt like my body was behind me, and my mind, myself, was somehow in front of my body, still in my body, but in front of it. And in front of me, where the mountain had been, was this huge darkness, and this darkness extended at a great distance. And I was wondering what was going on. I was just confused. And then this pinprick of light appeared very far away. And this light, which was brilliant and very small, rushed across this space and expanded as it came at me. And as it came at me, and almost in an instant, covering this vast distance, it communicated to me telepathically without language, you're coming with me, I'm taking you, you're mine. And I thought, I am not going anywhere because I don't know what's going on. So I kind of reached in and took up my willpower to put up like a shield of I'm not going anywhere, I'm determined to stay here. And it enveloped me and took me, just pulled me right out. And I recognized it. I knew that this was the same angelic consciousness being that I had encountered previously in my life, who had pulled me from my body. But this time, I was no longer connected to my physical self. All these other times previous to that, there was always like a tube or a tunnel or a cord connecting me to my physical body, my soul self. But this time it was cut, and I felt it cut, snap, cut, and I was no longer connected to my physical body. And in that instant, I didn't care what happened to my body. I was no longer that person. I was a being of light, and I was encased in this orb of consciousness, being carried back the direction it had come, flown, and I was made of, metaphorically, photons. So I'm a body made of light, shaped like a humanoid, like a hominid, but I'm sort of encased inside of this angelic form. I can't move. But I can, because I don't have any physical eyes, I can still see out through kind of in every direction. I can see, and I can see darkness. Only I have another perspective. I'm seeing me inside of this angelic being as if I am the eye of God on the outside in the darkness, seeing me in the orb of consciousness. But when I look from my inside, I can't see that. I can only see it from the outside. So I have this bilocation thing going on, and I understand that this angel, this orb of consciousness, is also bilocated. It in this giant form that it is, all powerful, all comforting, all welcoming. I was at peace in this space, but I also knew that it was a small bit of this much larger self. And then this much larger self was instantaneously communicating itself to me through this angelic being as I'm being carried far away from this world. We go up to the edge of this dark space, this intermediate void in which through which we are traveling, back to the edge of where it had first appeared. And as we get to this edge, it unfolds, or I pop out, or something happens where suddenly I am no longer inside it, and I'm not shaped like a hominid anymore. I am shaped like a ball of plasma. I am a gigantic consciousness myself in a space the size of the universe alone. There's nothing else in this space, just me and darkness. But this darkness has an illumination because I can see the darkness. I don't know how to explain this, but I can see the darkness, and I can see to the edge of this universe I'm inside of. And at the very edge of this universe, this big, huge bubble, is a deeper darkness that I can't see through. It is infinity, the edge of infinity itself. And I'm in a womb of the divine, and the whole thing is alive. And I am in and of and totally understanding my true highest self, that I had always been this consciousness, this orb of plasma that is my sight, is my hearing, is my thinking, is my understanding, is my feeling, but I don't have any body or language in the way of my beingness. And in this space, there is no thing. This is a place of no thingness. There are no molecules, no quarks, no electrons. There's nothing familiar at all to this world, but I'm in contentment of the knowledge of my true self. And in this space, I can see in every direction at once. And as I'm looking, that deeper infinite darkness suddenly opens. It kind of rends open, and as it opens, this light pours through. And of course, it is as you've heard others describe, the indescribable, beautiful light that is brilliant, so brilliant it would burn the eyeballs out if you had them, but it doesn't hurt at all, and it's emoting just love and light. And as soon as I see it, I want it. It is the most beautiful being, energy, and all of my desire goes toward it. And in an instant of my thinking that I want to be with it, I'm in front of it. So my thought is my travel. And so now I'm in front of it, and it's pouring out, and it's gigantic in comparison to me. And it has all these different attributes to it. It's solid and it's fluid. It has a hard surface, but it's also translucent and transparent. It's alive, and it's life, and its life is pouring out, surrounding me, and it is all life, and I know that it's all life. And it's this brilliant white light, but it's simultaneous. All of the colors and in the electromagnetic spectrum, not just the visible light we have, but infrared, ultraviolet, and a million different types of others. And it's all these little pixelizations of all of these different forms of light in unity with each other, expressing all life. It is the living being of the presence of the Creator. And it is love, 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 and all I want is it. And so I reach to touch it with my orb consciousness, and as I touch it, I am sucked into it, and I am opened, and it pours inside of me. So now it's inside of me and around me, and I can see through it into the infinite deeper darkness. I can see that there's deeper in I can go. But I'm inside of this light, and I am all these things happen at once. I'm in timelessness. So I have a life review where I see the divine become an eyeball. And this eyeball is the eye of God, and it is light itself, and its life is pouring into me, making me exist in the moment of my existence. And so there's this connection of the light itself, the all-seeing eye that is seeing the totality of my life that I had just lived, because it had lived it with me, because it is me, because its light that is making me has always been making me. And now I know that this is true. And I see that I have always been being called into being, and that I had an origin of being called into being, but it had been eons and eons and eons and eons ago, and that I'm always in the now. I'm always being called into being in the now. And as it's seeing the totality of my just lived life, I am a radiant collection of light of photons so I'm back in a humanoid shape, but the light that's pouring into me, making my existence, also is around me, like rays coming out of me. And this is also me. But inside of this being of light, as the I is looking at me, speaking to me, I love you, I've always loved you, I've made you, I make you now, I am you, you are me. As I am being seen, I see inside myself these little dark spots of vacantness, of empty negative space. And those negative spaces, I sense and understand that they are not of the light. And they are small in comparison to this brilliance of 99% of me is this light, but there are these parts of me that aren't. And so I coalesce them into one structure, and I try to hide them from the light, which I was like, the shameful things that aren't of light, I will not let them be seen. But as soon as I do that, I am entered into them. So now my consciousness goes inside of this darkness, and I have the second part of my life review. The first part of my life review was, no matter what you did, I loved you anyway. The second part of my life review is, these are the things that I did that hurt other people. And so in my life review, I experienced all of the pain that I caused everyone in my life from their interior as they experienced it, as I gave it to them when I was alive. Their psychology, their chemical, emotional reactions, their physical reactions, the whole thing. I was them, and I was also Peter. And in each moment of me causing pain to somebody, I experienced all of my reasons and emotions for causing that pain. So I was in two places at once. I was experiencing in chronological order, in a sequence, all of the pain that I had intended to give away and all of my reasons and emotions behind it. Simultaneously, all of these people, I experienced the pain that I gave them, and the pain that I gave them on my side was small. The pain that I gave them on their side was ginormous, and that the light itself was still surrounding me and speaking to me. I love you. Welcome. I love you. But I was so encapsulated and entranced by the suffering that I had created that it was blinding me to the presence of the light itself. And all I could see was my selfishness and my shame. And I wasn't judged by the light. I judged myself in comparison to its beauty, to its life, to its love, this unconditional, infinite love. And here I was, this mean little thing, so attached to my own selfishness that I caused pain, when all there was in reality, in this space of reality, was love itself. And as I went through this, I saw all of the pain that I had caused, but I saw all of the pain that all humanity caused. And I understood that I was exactly like every other person. There was no worse person or better person, that we're all, in comparison to the unlimited beauty, the unlimited purity, the unlimited unconditional love. And so this put us at this equality level of brokenness, and that the voice of the divine, without sound, without language, was telling me, you didn't design the structure of existence. You're not to blame for being this way, but you did cause those problems because you chose to. And so as I listened to this and I understood that I wasn't to blame for the structure, all of the love that I had given away and all the love that had been given to me became apparent to me from these very same people. And as that love became apparent to me, my heart turned from myself back toward my origin. And in the instant of accepting the love, I was infilled and inflated, and all of my wrongdoings were demolecularized, as if they had never existed. And I was infilled and inflated by this combination of beauty, love, joy, truth, knowledge, awe, understanding, wisdom, truth, peace, and they were charity. They were all interwoven into one singular oneness of being, of light love. And as this infilled me, I was inflated by it. I became bigger and more space of this bliss, paradise, joy, understanding. It infilled me to a point at which I was nearly obliterated as a separate entity from the light itself. And when I reached this stage of almost full absorption, of full union, I was reduced to a singular photonic self. I was back in this universe of empty space, but I was a singular photon, interconnected, interwoven with, entangled with this infinite field of individual photons. They were all entangled with each other. We were the mass mind of the infinite divine of light and love itself, and I was that thing. I was outside of the huge field of it because I was still in this universe no-thing space, but I was entirely entangled with the one mind, the one self. And as I'm in this space, I see my original nature. And as I'm in my original nature, I then am shown, and when I say I see, what I mean is I am shown. I'm not looking around, making choices. It just becomes apparent to me. I'm shown the origin of my incarnating soul. So here I am way up above, and I see this, out of this infinite darkness down below, this tube appear like a tunnel, and this tunnel travels through this empty no-thingness space for some distance and time, and then all of these marbled worlds appear inside of it, many in sequence, and I am alive in all of them. They're all inside this one long soul, and the voice says to me, I have been always calling you into being. And as I'm always being called into being, all of these lives, these previous lives, I'm alive in all of them. Not Peter, but my soul self, this lower soul self is inside of them, like piercing down like a kebab stick, a bamboo kebab stick piercing into this world. And I can see that these are all of my lives, but I'm not dead in those lives. I'm alive in those lives, not as the individual person, but as my soul. And as I see this, I say to the divine without language, can I look? Can I see? Can I enter in? And so I'm swept down from this higher state, and I travel down this bamboo kebab rod into a world, and in this world I'm in this guy's body. I know I'm in this guy's body. I know I'm still in heaven. I know that I'm here in this world, and I'm inhabiting this guy, and I'm walking down this dusty road. There are palm trees and donkeys and carts, and it's like a thoroughfare. It's not a city. It's kind of coming up to a city or in between cities, but there's a lot of people on this road, and they're going this way and they're going that way, and I'm walking with a bunch of guys, and I can see that I have dark skin, I have dark curly hair, I can see that I have sandals on my feet. I'm looking around, I've got clothing on and a belt, and I know I've got a beard because I look over my shoulder, and there's all these guys I'm walking with, and they all have black beards, curly black beards, and they're dark skin, and they got dark hair, and it kind of cascading, and we're having a conversation in a language that I, Peter, don't speak, but I understand because I'm this other guy. And it's a spiritual conversation. It's about spiritual things, and they're having this talk, and I look over my shoulder and they say, let's ask this guy. And so they ask, and I'm a friend, I'm like in this group, we're buddies, and they ask me this question, and as I begin to answer, I'm pulled out. And so now I'm up above again, and then I kind of go back in the chronology to another tiny little world, and I'm shoved inside this tiny little world, and in this world I'm like a lizard. I don't even know if I'm on Earth or not, but I'm some kind of tiny little lizard-like creature. My eyeballs are different. And so I see the world with ultraviolet or infrared, or I don't know how to describe it. I could see shapes and colors, but they were very unlike anything I'd seen before. And I was absolutely still. So I'm in this absolute stillness. I know I'm in a shadow. I know that there's a predator looking to eat me. And so I'm in this weird state of fear and peace at the same time. I'm locked in absolute immobileness, and yet I'm content. My stillness is a function of the peace, but the action to get to the stillness is a function of my fear of being eaten in the moment, because this predator's like right next to me, walking by, looking for me, and doesn't see me. And then I'm pulled out. And so I'm back out, and then I have this experience where I'm shrunk back down to a smaller size, where I have a remembrance of my immediate past life. And so even my past life, so in this space, when I'm up above, even my past life, I'm still alive in my last life. I'm alive in all of these lives as a soul. They're like happening, even though they're in this world, they'd be in the past and I'd be dead. Timelessness is totally weird. So I'm back shrunk down to this human shape. And I remember my life, and I remember why I wasn't going home. My sister had run away, had caused great damage in my family. There was long bereavement and illness as a result. And I could see this, and I said to the divine, first I said to the divine, am I dead? And the voice says, yes, you're dead. It's time for you to come home. And I say, but what about my parents? And as I say, and like I said, this all happened at one time for me. I tell it in a sequence, but that's not the way I experienced it. I don't know which came first, the chicken or the egg in this. It all kind of happened at the same time. And so I'm in this space. I see my parents. I see their suffering. I say, what about them? If I die, they're going to suffer. I'm swept across this vast space, and I see our whole universe being created by the light itself. I see the structure of the love light functioning in the now, making all things exist. I see the earth. I see all people on the earth in live time. I see golden light inside all of their hearts. I see that nobody can see this but me. I see bad people who do terrible things. They have this light inside of them. I see people who do good things. They have this light inside of them. There's no exceptions to this. Everybody is made of the same divine original goodness. And it's not just human beings. It's everything that there is in the entirety of the universe. And I can see it in existence. And as I see this, the divine shows me my parents' lives as they had just lived up to this point and all of their suffering. And then there's this split, and I see mom and dad A and mom and dad B. And in A, I'm alive with them. I go back and their suffering is a certain degree. And in B, I'm dead and their suffering is like nuclear bombs going off in my entire family. The whole thing shatters. And I say, and I see their ends. I see their deaths. I see in their deaths, they come to this place of paradise and become like me, this soul that is absolutely beloved. And in the middle of all of this, all of the divine love, all of it for the size of our universe, the size of the infinite, unexpressible, unconditional love of the divine is all aimed at me personally. Like I am fulfilled with all the light and love there is. And it tells me to me that nothing is outside of that love, that everything is inside of that love. It's not just me, although it feels like it's just me. And therefore my parents will become like me when their lives end. And it's also welcoming me home and saying to me, so see, the length of their life is a snap of the fingers, just like yours. So why don't you stay? And I say, well, if it's the length of the life is a snap of the fingers, can I come back here if I go back there? Because I'll be here back in a moment. And the voice says, yes, you can go back. I say, well, then I choose to live my life. It says, it won't live your life. And it throws me out. And I get kicked out, and I get encased in this angelic orb again, and I'm being densified. I'm being like condensed, but also made thicker. And as I'm traveling back inside this, wondering what's happening inside this angelic being, I see this beam of light, gigantic white beam of light coming out of the deep darkness, which I can't see inside of, creating all of these doorways, and all of these doorways are individual lives that I could live in this body. And some are very close to the beam of light, and some are very far away. And the angelic being, the divine, tells me, choose a life, choose light. And I choose a life with light. And I make all of these choices, and the door opens, and I travel down this tunnel. And in this tunnel are all these doorways leading to all these other tunnels of lives I could have lived, all these probabilities. And I get to the end of this tunnel, and I get shoved back in my body, and I am encased inside this form, and I'm back in a hellish life of pain and suffering. And I am disconnected from heaven, and I awaken to my friend telling me that I was dead.
Wow. I have never heard these NDE stories in such greater detail. So storytelling is an art. Sitting around the campfire for thousands of years, this is the way they shared. It brings up a couple of really interesting sort of quick questions before we keep going, which is, you said you were merged into the everything on the other side, and it was all one and so forth, and yet you still had a sense of me. There's still an identity. The merging of me isn't lost in the oneness. It's still there.
I think yes, except for there is a point at which it's not. And that is when one is completely the divine itself. There is subsequent to this experience, I had another experience while I was alive where I became no thing. I had no identity separate from the light itself. And I want to say this. I want to say that when I was dead, the light had no form. It had no structure. It had no religion. It had no culture. It had no language. It had no idea of anything that was human. All ideas of humanity are in it. They come from us, but they are not the thing itself. There was no gender. There was no religion. There was just the beingness of light that is incomprehensible. And even the word light and love, they have nothing to do with what I'm talking about. They're as best as the words that I can come up with in order to communicate this. This is of the difference between me and the divine is a single-celled early life on planet Earth compared to the complexity of the structure of an entire galaxy. That big a difference.
Right. It sounds like maybe we have something backwards here, how we say God made us in his image. It kind of feels like we're making God in our image. We know we're familiar with what we are and so forth, and so we're trying to say, oh, God must be a guy, looks like us, and so on. Where if you looked at all those different lives and all those different balls you had, you were maybe a human here, but you maybe have been, something else there and something and so on. All those different experiences and all those different spaces are all happening at the same time, connected into maybe your soul. But every one of them is so different. If you went into any one and it's so vastly different, that entity in that space would say, I wonder what it's like on the other side. Well, there must be a powerful being and he must look just like us and so on. And then you go to the next orb and they say it again, but that's completely different as far as that experience goes. So it feels like you don't really know until you get to the other side. The other side is the commonality of the oneness and the experience that you had. And we just happen to be one manifestation outside that for a particular experience, but it's just one of many.
And the image, I think that it's the common misunderstanding of Genesis is the image it's not a person image. It's photon, like an image. You make an image on film, you're using photons to make that image. And the thing on the film, it's not the photons of the light. It produces this thing that looks like the thing it was. But the image of the divine is the light itself. That's in Eastern Orthodoxy, they have this thing called original goodness, which didn't make it over to Catholicism or Protestantism. Original goodness is the very center of the divine being that makes you exist And all things exist. All living things in particular exist. And at the very core of the center of ourselves is the divine light itself, and that's the image. We are. Juliana Norwich put it this way. She said, between God and me, there is no between. That's not a direct quote, but that's what she meant.
So is it the case, oftentimes you hear, and I think you mentioned this a bit, that when you're on the other side and you have a thought, you manifest that instantly? If I think of myself going into that light, I go. If I think of myself manifesting in physical form, maybe I do that too. So it could be formless and light, but it could potentially be anything you'd like.
Well, there was a point I didn't tell you about where I wanted to understand. I was in this void, and I was also part of me in our universe, seeing our universe in live time. And I wanted to know everything about how the universe worked. I wanted to know all of the science, all of it, biology, chemistry, cosmology, geography, geology, everything. I wanted to know everything. And in an instant of my wanting to know that, I knew all of it. All of it. There was all of this knowledge, and I had the capacity without a human brain. My soul had the capacity to absorb all of this knowledge in an instant, instantaneously. And it's not just the science of it, it's the totality of everything that is in it. But what I couldn't see, what I was not shown and was shown that I couldn't see it, was how that happened. The complexity of the creation was infinitely beyond even my almost godlike power of comprehension, but not quite godlike.
There's your difference there.
You were right. I was in a communion form where I was the light itself, communing with the light, but I still was a creature. My soul was a creature made by Creator. And that was very clear to me.
All the science and the biology, the chemistry, the physics that was given to you, did that apply to this earthly experience? Did it apply to all those other little balls that you lived inside, or were they all different?
It's like in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. They want to know the answer to everything. And in the book, the answer is 42. I wanted to know the answer to everything. I wanted all knowledge. It's like if I had Genie. Hey, Genie, give me all the knowledge of all the universe, like at the end of Aladdin. Only that's what happened, only not with the power, just with the knowledge. But when I came back to my body again, my tiny little brain, I only got to bring back tiny little bits. I can't even, you mentioned that my NDE is a detailed story. I've spent my entire life trying to understand this. I went to graduate school for this. I studied, I spent my whole life in study, in contemplation, in interior work, because I wanted to bring heaven here to me now. And as a result of that, in the practices of my silences, parts of my NDE keep showing up. I keep learning new things about what happened to me, and I don't forget them. It's not, I can't remember a name if it's going to save my life. Somebody I met who I might even like. I had this experience last night. I walked into this restaurant. I know this woman. I've known her for 20 years. I looked at her face. I knew her face. I had no idea what her name was. NDE material, I never forget. It's not just lodged in my brain. It's lodged in my soul. And my soul remembers, and it filters through my brain, and my brain somehow grasps parts of it.
Got it. So your soul has all the knowledge, and it has it all right now. Our tiny little brains couldn't possibly hold that. And by the way, that's probably the intention of this experience, is to live in a world that's massively limited and see how we do. We're disconnected from love. We're on the other side, we're fully connected all the time. Try being disconnected from love and all that experience in a tiny little CPU that we have right here, and process this experience, and let's see how you do. That feels like that's how we're here, right? So best of luck. And you have a glimpse into what it looks like on the other and feels like on the other side. And the more questions you ask, the more capacity they give to your CPU. They give you maybe they give you a small GPU over here or something, and you're really kind of cranking away at this in other ways other people didn't. But it's kind of like when someone walks up to a Pac-Man game, remember the old arcade games when you put your quarter in? Well, the Pac-Man moves around, and say you kind of put your consciousness in that, so you're running around. It's very limited. It can only go left or right, and it can only eat things. That's all it can do. Imagine if two Pac-Man characters went up to each other and said, "What do you think happens after we die?" "Oh, I don't know. There's a creator." And that's what we're in right now. We're just in the little character mode here. With such a limited capacity, how could we even comprehend what created us and why we're here and what it is? We just don't know. There's just no way of knowing. And so it feels to me like these stories are glimpses into that allow us to potentially sort of dream about what it might be like on the other side. Thank goodness for your stories. And by the way, I know that's your first NDE. You also have this interesting out-of-body experience. You can tell next, and then we'll go into your next NDE. Sound good?
Sounds good.
You had some sort of out-of-body experience. You had no sleep one night. You came home, you drank too much coffee, you laid on the bed, and you went into this immediate out-of-body experience. What is that? How do you describe that?
I've had a whole series of those since I was a child. They began when I was 5 years old, and they're periodic, so that it's not a consistent thing like year to year, but they do come and they happen to me, and they are what would be called a mystical experience, where it's an out-of-body experience that I'm not making happen. It happens to me. Most of the time, the same angelic being, this intelligence, comes and takes me. And in a similar ways, it took me in my first near-death experience and welcomed me in my second. The difference being to my second near-death experience is that in these mystical experiences, this angelic consciousness just snatches me, just like pulls me right out. And I've had that experience quite a number of times.
When did that happen? Was it after the second one or in between the two?
This one that you're talking about was in between the two. So I had this daily broadcast on a couple of NBC stations. I was on just before the news, just before the weather every morning. So I was a popular talking head, but talking about spirituality and devotion and storytelling. And so I ended up on our local public television station that night before as a fundraiser. They ran an auction for a week and they brought in people, and I was one of those people. And so I was up, it was a Friday night, and I was up till 11 o'clock on camera after working all day. And so I was chugging coffee. Like, I think I had 7 or 8 cups just to get through my stint between 7 p.m. and 11 p.m. to stay live on camera and bring, today we have this thing. And then, of course, I had to drive home an hour and a half, and I had more coffee to get me home. I didn't even get to bed till like 1 in the morning. But I couldn't go to sleep because I was totally jazzed. So I had too much caffeine in my body, so I didn't sleep at all. And I got up the next morning, and I went downstairs to help the kids with their homework because I couldn't sleep anyway. But, I hadn't slept, so even though I was wide awake, I didn't have any brain cells that were functioning. So I wasn't really helping my kids at all. So I said, look, I got to go lay down. I went out into our sunroom, and I lay down on our sofa, and I couldn't fall asleep. So I decided to meditate. I've been a meditator since before my first NDE. And so I lay on the sofa on my back, close my eyes, and I go into my meditation. And my meditation, I've been using the Jesus prayer, which is a famous prayer in Eastern Orthodoxy. I chant the name of Jesus. And I built my interior meditation life on centering prayer and on the work of the Yoga Sutras by Panagore. And I began that practice a long time ago. So long time meditating. And I can always calm myself down and calm my mind down. So I lay down on the sofa, I start to meditate, and as soon as I begin to chant, I drop inside myself, and as the quietude takes hold of me, I'm snatched out of myself. And every one of these mystical experiences that I've had since I was a child, a 5-year-old, they're all different. They all have some similarities, but they're always with a new lesson. And so this particular time, I got pulled out of myself. A series of a series of mystical experiences that I've been having since before my first near-death experience, and then subsequent to it, before this particular event, I'd be flown across a space of some kind, approaching the light, which I could see. But I was always some distance away, and each one of these sequential mystical experiences would lead me a little bit closer to the light, but I'd be in a different environment. And this particular environment, this time, I was pulled from myself and I was put into what I call the cosmic chorus, or the cosmic music, or the choir of angels. I was in a realm of harmonic music where everything of the entirety of this space, which had no beginning and had no end, was entirely made up of beautiful, very complex music of which I was made. So I'm in this musical space, and this time my soul, my consciousness, was a section, a form of this music, and I was being played. So this music was playing itself and playing me, and my whole consciousness was sound, was beautiful music, and I was being rushed like along. This is all metaphor, like along a 5-bar piece of music, and I'm being rushed along this, being played in this cosmic space. And in the distance, I have no eyes, I have no physical body. I am consciousness itself, but I'm in this space. I am harmonic consciousness, vibration consciousness, and I can see with the whole of my being the light, and I'm being rushed up in this space. So I'm not only being played, kind of melodically, but I'm also being rushed upward, and it's this upward motion toward the intensity of this brilliant light, which of course is indescribably bright, indescribably love, indescribably powerful. And as I get just about to it, so all these previous mystical experience, I'm always kind of coming closer and closer to the light. And this time I'm almost in it. I'm like right to the edge of it. And what frequently happens is when my brain kind of experiences what my soul is experiencing, my brain way back in my body says light. And as soon as my brain says light, I'm out. I'm shoved back in my body again. And then I'm pulsed out again. So I went through this pulsation. I'm in this space approaching the light. I'm back in my body. And so I'm pulsing back and forth. And when I'm back in my body again, I open my eyes, I see that I'm in the room, and we had a mid-sized poodle at this point in our lives. And the poodle came over, I could see the poodle like looking at me intensely, touching my nose with its nose, and then I'd be pulled out again, and then drop back in my body and pulled out again and pulsating. And then when it was finally over, this final drop back into my body, and I should add that in each pulsation, I was further from the light. So I had this high level of almost connectivity, and then in each level I'm lowered down, like on the deeper baser notes or something, or more complex harmonics up above and less down below. But each time I was brought into this cosmic womb of sound, of symphonic, beautiful, inexplicable sound that was making everything exist. So I'm back in my body again, and I don't know who I am. These kinds of intensive mystical experiences, very similar to near-death experiences, can shatter a person's identity, attachment to self. And every single time I've had one of these or a near-death experience, I come back shattered, and it's not a pleasant thing. It's a disorienting, confusing thing, and then I have to be reassembled. Somehow I get reassembled, and it's different ways that this happens. So this particular time, hours have passed. This isn't minutes. This is hours. The kids have done their homework. They've left downstairs. And when I'm back in my body again in each pulsation, I can hear what's going on, and then I'm ripped out again. So a couple times I remember opening my eyes and seeing my wife in the doorway. But I didn't know who she was. I didn't know who the poodle was either. And I didn't know who I was. And so this time I come back in my body again. I open my eyes. I look around the room, and I am completely disoriented. I don't know what this reality is. It's not like I don't know where I am. I know I'm on Earth. I don't know I'm on Earth. I don't know where I am at all. I'm completely lost in this spatial temporal place. And I sit up, I'm kind of looking at my hands like, what are these things? And I look over and I see this figure in the doorway leaning. I don't know it's a doorway. I can see shapes. I can understand it's a shape. But then my brain starts clicking in, and she says to me, "Your name is Peter Panagore. I'm your wife. You're in your home." And I know that she was seeing the expression of confusion on my face, like, who are you? Where am I? And I'm trying to sit up and I'm trying to walk. It's like slow-mo space walking. I'm trying to like get coordination back again. And then I'm so slowly coming back into my body, coming back into myself. But I am now somehow different again. I after my NDE, all the mystical experiences prior to my first NDE sort of set me up in preparation for it. I didn't know that until, looking in hindsight, till after it happened. And in all of my mystical experiences after my first NDE, they are healing for me. They sort of reorient me on my interior. So they connect me more deeply to my higher self, to my higher consciousness, whatever you want to call it, the Atman, whatever you want to call it. It realigns me more intently to that, and the consequence of that, especially this particular mystical experience, was after this one, I finally became more grounded in the world in a way that I hadn't been for 40 years. It sort of reset me by bringing me so close to the light, by showing me the structure, the harmonic structure of not the universe cosmos, but the energy that makes existence happen cosmos. By aligning me inside of it and having this experience of me being music, I came back into this life more well grounded than I'd ever been before, and it was noticeable by my kids and my wife. So I knew that I was more integrated here, but they knew it too. I didn't have to tell them; they could just see by my behavior and the way that I lived my life subsequent to that. And one of the things that are about mystical experiences is you don't make them happen. You don't cause them. I don't meditate. I wasn't meditating to leave my body. I've never practiced that. And I haven't practiced that purposefully because I've always been taken out of my body and shown what I need to see, experience what I need to experience. And I leave that up to the divine. I don't try to, because this is I'm a tiny, tiny, tiny little thing. And the infinite is the all-knowing. And so what do I know? I let it take me and show me what it needs to, and that experience set me up for, well, I should tell you that there was a result of this. So sometimes these mystical experiences leave me with something new spiritually. I sometimes get these spiritual gifts after these experiences. I don't plan them, they just happen. I've been knowing that the chi, the prana, the Holy Spirit, whatever you want to call the life force energy, I've been using that in my life, but I empty out of it. Like I'd fill up in the morning with meditation and quiet, and I'd have like an excess of this prana, and then I could use it during the day in counseling sessions, or not like trying to heal people, but just like be present with them. Let the light show itself. But I would always run out. I would always have an empty tank. And at the end of the day, but after this experience, I describe it as if you look at a yoga a chakra chart, and there's the heart chakra and the navel chakra, and in between them is often this big, huge circle, like connecting them. Well, that opened up after this experience. I had never experienced that space before. It opened up, and it was like a river was flowing through me, as if from my back to my front, or my front to my back, or both. There was this huge, wide river of peace. And this peace was deeply experiential for me. It was the peace that made me connected to the world in a way that I'd never been before. And as this peace flowed through me, I became, I didn't need to refill. It became a flow for me, a flow from above and out. And so I had this constant stream of it. And in the middle of all of this lasted 6 or 8 weeks, this stream flowing through me, wide open. I slid into second base playing softball. I dislocated my ankle, I fractured my ankle, and I separated my tibia from my fibula, which involved lots of pain and surgeries. And all through that piece never left me. It didn't shut off. And so even though I had all this pain, was taking pain meds, this thing continued to flow. And then one day it just closed. And I was bereft. I didn't know what to do. I was off. And then years went by until one day I thought to myself, I gave myself my own advice, which is whenever you have a mystical experience, bring your mind back to the location of that experience in your physical body and use that as a gateway back. And I finally was like, oh yeah, I've told myself this a million times. Why don't I practice it? So I began to do that. Bring in my meditation, bring my mind back to that experience of the flow of the peace, and then the door opened again, and now it's open. And I don't choose these experiences. I don't choose the gifts that come from them. They just come, and I participate in that, but in their usage and my access to them. But I don't make them. I don't create them, and I don't choose them.
That sounds amazing because now you have this untapped flow of energy. You don't have the tank full at the beginning of the day and at the end it's empty and you go home exhausted. You have this flow through you all day long, this energy. So that's amazing. So what I heard here is you had these mystical experiences young that got you warmed up, but you were still pretty young when you had that full NDE. And then much later, you had this OBE experience that you just mentioned. And it seems like every time you have these experiences, you shape shift as a person, and these stories are getting more and more rich. Now there's one more, and that is the second NDE that you had.
After my first near-death experience, I came back an entirely different person. My experience of the physical, emotional, psychological world in which I was in was absolutely different from what it had been before. The physicality of the world was illuminated. It was illuminated. There was light pouring. The light of the divine was pouring out of all sorts of objects, human beings and animals and plants in particular, insects, fish, anything in nature, but also out of concrete sidewalks and telephone poles. Everything had this luminosity to it, and it had this fragility to it. There was a thinness to it. Its temporality was weak. It was like I could poke my finger through it, like a Japanese sliding door. You know, in the movies with the Japanese houses with the paper. It was like I could put my finger right through it, and the light was pouring through. So there was this physical thing that happened to me, and I came back. I came back angry that I didn't know that I was going to come back into this world of suffering, because on the other side there was no suffering. It was only healing and wholeness. And so now I'm stuck back in this world of suffering and pain, and I felt like the divine didn't show me the fine print. And my lostness in the world, my aloneness in the world, my isolation from all of my relationships, because I was now a very different person, drove my interior world. And so one of the things where I first discovered was that I could, through my meditative life, which I had begun several years before, in my meditative life, in my meditative state, I could find a piece of the peace that I had on the other side. And so when I would drop inside myself and go into quiet space, calming my breath, calming my mind, aiming towards silence, I could touch again the divine presence. And as I touched the divine presence, every time I touched it, it grew a little inside me. Some of my attachment to myself was stripped away, and some more space was created for the presence of the divine. And that one thing became the center focus of my entire life until today. different techniques, different tools, but the journey inward, the connectivity to the higher self, to the divine being, to the light, was the way in which I learned to integrate into the world. So I came back to this ice cliff, and my friend, my partner Tim, was an atheist, and he knew that I was dead. He's like, "You were dead. I thought you were dead. You were dead." I pulled the rope. We descended. We treated for hypothermia. We got down. We self-treated in the tent, and then eventually we were well enough to drive off. And everything physical was this effort, like eating and breathing and seeing and smelling and being in this physical form was alien to me. I was above myself, looking through my eyes, hearing through my ears, and I was observing my own self, my own thoughts. I was observing, oh, these are thoughts. Oh, this is a car. Oh, I'm having fingers. Look at those funny fingers. For months, I'm like this. And shortly after we got back to Bozeman, I was in this theater troupe, American Sign Language theater company that part of the university. We went off on this 24,000-mile trip around the United States. And so I isolated myself from the entire troupe. I sat in the back of the pickup truck by myself for 3 months, meditating when I wasn't at somebody else's house or having dinner or having to be on stage. I was alone in my interior world. One of the reasons why I stayed away from people is because I didn't know where I ended and they began. I had this permeability to their thoughts, to their emotions, to their presence, and I was getting lost constantly. I'd be with somebody and I didn't know. Somebody'd be angry and I'd have all this anger. What is this? Is it me? Is it them? I couldn't tell, and that was a very trying part of my life. I eventually learned to live with it and cope with it and figure out how to manage it. But it took a long, long, long time. It takes at least 10 years to integrate after a major experience like this, because every single aspect of my psychology had changed. My identity, my idea of myself, who I was no longer who people saw me as. So I lived these two lives simultaneously. I had my masked exterior where everybody thought I was Peter, and I had my living interior where I know that I am not Peter. I know that I'm inhabiting this body, and it's not a belief. It's experiential every moment of my life. And because I felt like I was exiled from heaven, even though I made this choice, self-exiled, but it didn't feel like I had control over this. I found that I needed to learn lots more about were there other people in the world like me. And so I changed the entire course of my career. I was going to be in the family architectural firm. I was going to go to graduate school. My sister was in graduate school for architecture at the time. My dad was an architect. My mom worked in the firm. We had these family plans. I had spent my entire college career working in construction so that I could swing a hammer with the guys, know what electricians were like and plumbers and how things physically got put together, so that when I got to graduate school, I could learn how to draw it, and then I could be like the guy that went to the site who could talk to the guys who were working on the site while we knew how this. We had this long plan, and I abandoned all of that because there was this day where I got back to Boston and my dad was going to bid on this mall. And it was in my city. We're a small city outside of Boston. And there was this wilderness area. And they wanted to build this big, huge mall on it. And my dad's like, Pete, go out and identify all of the geological formations on it for me. Draw up where the hills are and where the sand is and the gravel is and the ponds and the streams, so we get a picture of what this place is like, so we know how to. So I go out in this land, and as soon as I pull up to the side, I'm like, oh my God, this is holy ground. I kick off my shoes. I start to walk through this nature. This is like within weeks of my coming back, and I'm in butterflies are freaking speaking to me. The birds are like luminous orbs flying by me. The plants, I could sense the aliveness of the plants, and the earth itself was this radiant form of existence. And so I toured this site, and I can't take a single note. I got a clipboard and a pencil. I can't take a single note. I don't know what to do. I'm in this revelry, this ecstasy of the presence of nature. And it turns out that one of the things that happened to me when I came back is that nature is the presence of the divine for me. I became what they technically call a nature mystic, because I live in nature now. Because when I step outside, there's this radiance of peace that is just naturally comes to me. So I get back in the car, I drive back, and I go to the office, and my dad's like, "Pete, show me your drawing." I'm like, "Yeah, I didn't make one, Dad." He's like, "Well, what are you? I sent you out there for 3 hours. You've been out there for 3 hours. What are you doing?" And I said, I can't do this. I can't tear down nature to build anything. And so we had this row and so they're like, "No, you have to apply to the graduate program that we had talked about." And so I did. I applied to the graduate programs that we talked about, and I got into architecture graduate school. And I also applied to Harvard, Yale, and Princeton divinity schools, because I knew that I needed to study the mystics, because I was an English major, so I studied the transcendentalists and the romantics, and I knew that these people existed. I needed to know who I was. And so I got into these grad programs for architecture, and I was like, "I'm not going, Mom and Dad. I love you guys, but I got this thing." And I never told them. Okay, so I told them about the terrible night on the ice, but I never told anybody about how I died, because I had no idea how to talk about it, first of all. I didn't really know what happened to me. All I knew is that I had been to reality itself, and that this was not it. And that my beloved, I had a beloved. And that beloved was not here. I was estranged from my most beloved. And all I wanted to do was get back to the one who loves me most, who I love the most. And so I pursued an entirely different life. And so I have after effects. People always want to know what the after effects are. Some of them I've talked about, and some of them I haven't. Some are weird. Some are normalized for me now. But they are a constant experience in my life where I had to learn to adjust to things that other people could not see, and pretend like I couldn't see them either. Ghosts, auras, knowledge of people's emotional states. I could hear plants when they were thirsty. I had physical changes in my body. I could physically hear plants that were starving for water. It was I can feel people's energy fields with my palms of my hands. My eyes and my ears and my tongue and my nose and my fingertips, they're all one sense. I sense, I see the light, I hear the light, I feel the light, I smell the light, I touch the light, but it's not like they're separate. They're all one thing. And I guess the most shocking thing that happened to me in the first year was that I was back at UMass Amherst, where I was an undergraduate, and I was studying because I had done this year in theater. I was taking theater classes in my last couple of years of school, and so I was taking a mime class with a student of Marcel Marceau's school at UMass, and Marcel Marceau taught Hatha Yoga, and so I began a Hatha Yoga practice. And in the middle of all of this, I found I carried chi, or prana. It was a physical experience for me in my body that has form, structure, tactileness, and that changed my entire trajectory. I read the Yoga Sutras by Patanjali, and I integrated my mystical meditation life of centering prayer with his energy practices of Kriya Yoga, and my goal was and is to bring heaven here now to me, so I don't have to wait till I die. which is what I prayed for my entire life until my second near-death experience.
Until your second near-death experience. And that's a perfect segue into that. I was just going to bring that up. So one quick question before we do that is, the way you talk about this side, being so different than the other side, and so many people do, does it feel like this is a simulation, that it's just a thought mind game, that it's a hologram, that there's some physical nature? Is this an ant farm and there's actually physical things happening in the ant farm? Or is it just the Matrix, where when they plug into their head, they're thinking through things and they're a part of a simulation, but there's nothing physical about it? Is there any way to characterize it?
Well, I think of Shakespeare, when you prick me, do I not bleed? I tell you, when you prick me, I bleed. When my leg breaks, it hurts. When people die, people grieve. And so even though it is a limited temporal form and not the reality of realities itself, it still has a physicality to it that is experiential. And the pain people suffer, people complain about pain all the time. Why is there suffering in the world? The unanswerable question. That's because it's real to people.
It's real in the six senses, right? The five that we typically know, plus the sixth, which is the emotion. And so all of those senses are what give us the notion of reality. If we had 11 senses, we'd have even more going on, But so we're in this physical sort of world with those 5 plus emotion sort of senses that we're dealing with. Now, remember, in the movie The Matrix, when they were in the Matrix, they could eat food and taste it and feel pain and so forth and so on. And so it felt very real to them. The electrodes that were going into their head were stimulating those senses that we talked about, but none of it was real whatsoever. And maybe it doesn't make a difference. It certainly feels real.
It feels real, but none of it is real. None of it's reality. None of it's permanent. Even the length of the life of the universe, everything in it has a beginning and an end. The only thing that actually exists is the reality of the divine itself, in which all existences occur. There is nothing other than that. There is only this oneness. We talk about oneness here, and we can experience oneness here, but that's a portion of oneness. When you're actually in that state, there is no self. There is no identity. There is no physicality whatsoever. And so, yes and no. Yes, it's a simulation, and no, it's not. Because I'll tell you, I spent my entire career, half of my entire career, in the depths of people's pain. I was a church pastor, and that's exactly what my job was. Domestic violence, murders, grieving, estrangement, loss of children, death, dying, drownings, hurricanes. All of those things people feel with great reality. Meanwhile, I know it's all temporal. I'm going to leave here, and so are they. And in the leaving of this, all of that gets left behind as if it never existed. The healing on the other side isn't that, like, I could show you a scar, like a scar on my arm here. So I've got a scar on my arm here that maybe you can see and maybe you can't. That's because I had a wound, all right? There are no scars on the other side because there are no wounds. They don't exist. It's not like you forget them. It's like they never existed at all.
Does it feel like your life here is the blink of an eye?
Not while I'm living it. But that's a funny thing, okay? So I'm in two places simultaneously at all times. I'm always aware, 99% of the time I'm aware that I'm a soul. I am soul living a body. There are times when I was out sailing one day, solo sailing in this old boat, and I was in the shelter of an island in the Gulf of Maine, and I'm by myself, and I'm 3 or 4 miles offshore, and I'm like, I'm just going to go around this island. So I sail out into this wind, and it is blowing stink, as they say. It's like 10 knots more than I should be sailing under, and there's water coming to the boat, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm losing control of the boat, and I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, what's the worst thing that can happen to me? I could die. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm totally cool now. And so I got my mojo back, and so I forget at moments, but I'm always aware that I am an eternal being, and because I know I'm an eternal being, my temporal life is something to pass through. And I On the other side, I know it's going to be the wink of an eye, the snap of a finger, the turn of a page. But here, it's still life.
Yeah, it's linear time. And it kind of feels like live it to its fullest then. Why not?
Oh, yeah.
It even could be the case that we have a determined exit route out of here at some other point. So I can kind of get a little risky right now and still have a ton of fun. And that's not really my time. Maybe some other time is my time. But, I'm just having way too much fun here, Peter. We got to move on now to this. If you could share the second time you died, that'd be cool.
All right. So this is the first one was 1980, a bunch of mystical experiences in between. Second was 2015. Now, 10 years ago, this coming August. And I'll try to make the story short. I was visiting my family on Cape Cod, and I was on vacation. And I went out for this 3-mile run, and I was like, what the heck is wrong with me? And I've been running for 30 years at this point. I was like super fit. I was like, why is that? It's a terrible run. I feel awful. So I go back to the house and I say to my mom and dad, I said, I've only got a day or so left in vacation. I got this old sailboat somebody gave me. I'm going to go sailing. So I drive back to Maine, and that Saturday morning, I talk to my wife, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to go sailing for a couple hours. I know I just got back, but so I go down to the dock, and I can't even see the boat because it's totally fogged in. It's so fogged in, I can't even see the dock. It's like super thick. I'm like, I can't even go sailing today. What am I going to do? I'm going to go to the yoga studio. I have a couple of hours. So I go to the yoga studio where the teacher is a friend of mine. It's summertime, so there's a lot of summer people. I live in a resort town. There's a lot of summer people here, but there's a lot of people I know because it's also a small town. I arrive late. I go into the studio. She's already teaching. They're in downward dog. And I'm like, can I? And she sets me up in the doorway. So I'm halfway in the studio, halfway in the hallway. And I get down into downward dog. And I'm like, wow, I am sweating. And my chest hurts. I don't feel great. What's going on? I decide to lay down on my back in Shavasana and try to cool myself down. And I was like, my heart hurts. Oh, I'm having a heart attack. So I'd been on the ski patrol. I've been an ambulance attendant. My dad had a heart attack. My grandfather died of a heart attack. And my sister died of a heart attack. And so I'm like, I'm having a heart attack. But I'm super fit, man. I'm not like my sister or my dad or my granddad. I'm running every day, and I eat really well. So this is going to pass. And so I decide to get up and leave and go outside and lay down in the grass. I go outside. I lay down in the grass. I thought, oh my gosh, it's getting worse and worse and worse. I thought I should probably get myself to the urgent care center, which is a couple of miles away. I try to sit up. I can't sit up because if the pain is too intense. I lay back down again. It's like an elephant is standing on my heart in tree pose. It's like all of the weight right on my heart. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't. Oh, I'm going to die. Today's my death day. And I think to myself, what a great freaking day. This is the day I have been praying for since the day I died. I can finally go home. I told my wife the first chance I get to leave legitimately, I can't take my own life. First chance I get to go, I'm out of here. No offense, I love you and the kids, but you don't know what it's like on the other side. And so I'm lying there, and I'm kind of pumped that I'm going to die. And I think, I should really try to go to the ER because my family, I should at least try. So I try to sit up again. I can't. It's just too much. The teacher comes out sometime later, 20 minutes later, half hour later, I don't really know, because I'm lying there meditating to control my pain. And I think, oh my God, all these women, it's like 90% women and one guy in there. Like all these women are going to come out, they're going to find me dead. And they're all, I know 90% of them. And it's going to be terrible for them, but there's nothing I can do about it. So the teacher comes out. She says, what's going on, Peter? I say, I'm dying. I'm having a massive heart attack. And she's like, I've known you for 20 years. Look at you. You're Mr. Fitness. You're not going to die. And I'm like, no, really. I'm telling you right now, if I don't get to the urgent care center, I am going to die right here. And so she gets somebody out to help me get to the urgent care center. She says, let's call the ambulance. I'm like, no, it's Saturday. All the guys and women who run the ambulance, they're all scattered around town. It's going to take them 20 minutes to get to the ambulance, another 20 minutes to get to me. That's going to be 40 minutes. I could be dead by then. I need to get there now. So they carry this woman, this other neighbor of mine, teacher, carry me to a car. I get to the urgent care center. I call ahead. I'm like, hey, doc, I know the doc. I'm like, I'm having a massive heart attack. He's like, really? I'm like, yeah, I'm having a massive heart attack. Come on in. I get in because this is a small town. Everybody knows everybody. So all the nurses, I know all the nurses there. Some had been in my youth group in the church. Some had been church members, and they rush me off. You get an X-ray or a CAT scan. I don't remember which it was, and they see that I've got 100% blockage in my widowmaker, my lower ventricle, which is a 3 to 5% survival rate. And I'm an hour and a half from the catheterization lab. And I'm also an hour into, by the time I leave, I'm an hour out of my golden hour. You get 1 hour. And so I'm lying there and they're like, let's get the ambulance over here. And the ambulance comes over pretty quickly. And my wife shows up, my son shows up, and I've got 100% blockage. And they give me a decoagulant. And the doc says, it'll give you maybe a 3% trickle through and maybe you'll survive. Do you want some morphine? I'm like, no, I can't take morphine. I've had morphine. It makes me vomit. So I'm going to be, in an oxygen mask in the back of the diesel ambulance, and I'm going to be nauseous and vomiting while I'm having a heart attack. Not a good idea. So I'm going to meditate with my pain. And this weird thing about meditation is if you focus on your pain, you can separate from it. So I get in the ambulance, I'm focusing on my pain, I'm meditating, we're driving down, it's an hour, 20 minutes down, it's a Saturday, it's summer traffic, sirens going, I'm meditating, but I can hear everything that's going on. And so she radios in, and then she radios in this one time and she says, she's a paramedic, she says, we're losing him. And I'm like, oh, I'm dying right now. And so I open my eyes and I look at her and she's got panic on her face. She got the microphone up to her mouth and she looks down at me with panic and then she goes, instantly to professional, and I'm in too much pain to stay out. So I close my eyes and I go back into my meditation because it really, really, really hurts. So I go back in my meditation. As soon as I go back in my body, I'm not in my body anymore. I'm in this cavern. And this cavern is sort of my mental space. And I'm sort of outside of my mental space, and my life, my body, myself is sort of this dark cavern from which I am emerging. And I emerge out of this cavern and I'm in this darkness again, this kind of in-between space. And this angelic being comes rushing toward me again, this divine light. And this time it's speaking in the plural to me. Before it was, I'm taking you. This time it's, we've been waiting for you. It's your time to come home to us. We're welcoming you. And it's like 1,000 different voices all speaking to me, love and welcome. And instead of enveloping me this time, like embracing me, it sort of comes parallel to me and we start ascending together side by side. And I'm no longer a human being. I'm a body of light again. But as I begin to leave, I think to myself, my son, when he was at the ER, he looked me in the eye and I could feel his pain. Because I still am empathetic. I could sense all of his pain and suffering and his unpreparedness. And so I'm like, well, wait a minute. He's not really ready for me to go. And so I'm like, hold on a sec. And I turn around, I go back inside this cave and I take a look around and I look for my son and I see that his unpreparedness, he's in his late 20s and he's shocked and scared and he needs his dad. He's not ready yet for me to go. And I could see that. And then I could see my daughter, who had been in a terrible marriage, had just had a baby, lots of abuse, bad things happened. We had just rescued her out some months before, and I could see the baby's life. So the baby was 9 months old at this point or so, or maybe 7 months, and I could see her life projected in these two forms, A and B, and I could see her life without me, and I could see her life with me. And her life with me was just so much better than her life without me. I could see that I was like the bridge dad. I was the granddad who was going to be the dad until she got a real dad kind of person and make this bridge gap, and that I would have a super special relationship with her. And without me, it was going to be terrible. No, there was she wouldn't know that there was an absence, but the absence would be apparent in the way that her formation would happen without me. And so I turned around and I went back outside, and this angelic them had receded and then came back and was like, come on. And I said, well, I now know on this side of the veil where I was that the length of my life is a snap of the finger, a wink of an eye again. And I can see the rest of my life. I've got 30 years left or so. And that if it's all the same to you, I'll just go back in again and meet you on the next go round. And without asking permission, I just went back in again. And the next thing I knew, we arrived at the catheterization lab at the major medical center, and they wheeled me out and they unplugged my heart. And the next day, when I got out of the special victims unit, the special care unit, a bunch of my friends were there. I knew a bunch of doctors in the hospital, and my wife was there. My kid was there. My son was there. My daughter had come up with the baby from Boston, and where they were living temporarily. And I told them that I died. And my son said to me, the doc told me to say goodbye to you. When I held your hand and looked you in the eye, I knew you were going to die because the doc said you weren't going to make it. Because nobody makes it, and it's too far and too long, and my wife says, so when I was in the urgent care center, I looked up at her and I squeezed her hand and I winked at her, and she interpreted that wink as, oh, he's gonna stay, but my wink was, I'm leaving, honey. I love you, but I've told you before that the first chance I get, and so she said she'd been telling my son the whole way down, he's not really gonna go. He's going to stay. You're going to see. And it turns out she was right. And so I stayed. And I had been praying for my death from 1980 until then. And that's one thing that changed. I stopped. It was like the desire to go back ended because somehow or other in this new NDE, the thing that I'd been in pursuit of, heaven here now, even though this tube had opened inside of me, the radiance of the presence became an expansive bubble around me, where heaven became my existence here. It doesn't fix my problems. It doesn't make bad things go away. It just always reminds me in the external of my life that all has been well, is well, and will be well as I progress through my living. And that took about, now it's 10 years out since that, and I finally have adjusted to that. You don't need a near-death experience. You might think that you need one, but I'll tell you, length of the life is a snap of a fingers, and you're going to find out for yourself the moment that you die.
You had the special interruptions during your life to awaken you to some knowing that other people haven't had. It kind of feels like life is a marathon. What is that, 26.2 miles or whatever it is, I'm not sure. But you're halfway through and you want to quit. You're 3/4 of the way through and, you have a little more optimism. You get almost there, a mile or two out, and as bad as you feel, you're in this now. You want to stay in this. You have this feeling you're going to finish this thing out. And afterwards you're going to be able to sleep and eat and do all the things that could be kind of like the other side and could be like love. And this feels like torture and pain. But after a while, after 2 NDEs and an OBE, you kind of figure it out. And you're not only making the best of it, you're even doing more than that. And not only for yourself personally, but you're giving back so much also and helping so many people that didn't have these 2 experiences. It brings us to this next segment that I have here, which is called Heart's First Whisper. And what I do is I share a series of questions with you that I have prepackaged, set them all up just for you. I think they're going to be just right. And it's like your heart is going to whisper this, Peter, and you know how to use your heart. Your mind and your thoughts are not involved. Sound good?
Yes.
Excellent. First question is, if you could speak to your younger self just before the climb, what would you say?
Don't go.
You wouldn't have listened. You would not have listened. I think you might have said, hey, shop online for another axe and no hammer.
Yeah. Be better prepared. I was a Boy Scout too. Be prepared. I was not prepared.
You should have known better. Got it. Well, hey, that brings us to number 2, which is what part of you did you leave behind on that mountain and what did you gain?
I left my lower self on the mountain and I gained my higher self. I gained access to heaven and I left behind my false identity. The second NDE, I left behind my desire to die, and I gained my desire to live.
Big transitions. Cool. Number 3, in what ways did your experience rewire how you relate to pain?
Pain is temporary. Suffering is temporary. Endurance, determination, connection to the divine, knowledge of my eternal nature helps me endure pain and suffering.
Does pain also get your attention and focus it on something and maybe a catalyst?
The pain of the loss of my connection to heaven upon my return was the driving factor of the pursuit that I created for my entire life. And so the pain that I suffered was that which drove me toward the one I love.
Well said. And number 4, what truth do you now live by, even if few understand it?
Love is all there is. Life is temporary. Kindness matters.
If you walked into a crowded grocery store and got on a box and said that, how many people do you think would agree? And how many people would walk by and have no idea what you're talking about?
It would be a small percentage who would agree. But if it was in my small town, everybody would turn, look, and say, "Oh, that's just Peter."
It's too bad that it's a small percentage, but that's why you're here and why you're sharing. Number 5, do you think this life is more like a dream, a school, or a game? Are we actors in a play?
It's more like a dream. When I was dead, everything I wanted to know, I knew. When I came back here, I came back to my own ignorance. If there's anything here, I'm here to learn to do. That's to be a channel of light into the world and love into the world. And it's much more like a dream to me, from which I will awaken.
Very nice. Now, number 6, how has your understanding of God or the divine evolved since your return, especially in relation to traditional religion?
Oh, I came back what amounts to an atheist, because atheists aren't believers, and I am not a believer. I know from experience the divine love itself, and that all religion, for its good that it does do good in the world. For all the bad it does in the world, it's entirely made up. Just like all of human culture, there is nothing that is made in human language that is not invented in our minds, and none of it has reality outside of humanity. The religion is a useful tool in some places, and religion is a destructive weapon in others. I worked in religion for probably the entirety of my career, but I am not a religious person. I know that the oneness of being is all that there is, and that love is what really matters in life. And if parts of religion bring those forth, I'm all with it. And for the parts that don't, I'm all against it.
And you were a minister for many years. These are the research and discovery years of figuring all this out?
Yep. I spent 22 years as an ordained minister. More than that. More like 30 years. Sometimes in churches, sometimes on television. But never once, this is a confession, during my ecclesiastical council, when I was being voted on by the church whether I was worthy to be a United Church of Christ congregational minister, I lied to my council and told them that I was a believer, and I am not a believer. I'm not. But love itself, I think that Jesus was much more than they say he is. So much more than they say he is, and not at all what they say he is.
2 sub-questions here. One, what is God? And second one, what is Jesus?
What is God? Light and love, beauty, truth, joy, knowledge, understanding, creator, infinite, inexpressible, omnipresent, omniscient, omnibenevolent, the 99 names of Islam of God, the Atman, the Brahman, the nameless, no form, no containment, no structure, but unconditional and eternal love. And Jesus was super enlightened being, singleness, oneness teacher, who tried to teach the people with miracles and realized that all they want were miracles from me, tried to teach the people with language and parables. He realized that it's not communicable, and then decided to teach them with his own death to show that life was not what they thought it was. He's my greatest teacher. I have lots of teachers, but he's my greatest teacher.
Thank you. How has silence through meditation or inner stillness deepened your relationship with the divine?
Silence and meditation are moments of silence, and each moment of silence and meditation is an access to the now, to the capital N now, to the divine presence, because it's a stepping aside of the identity of the self. Every time I enter into the silence, my identity, my egoic self doesn't exist, and all I am is the silence itself, and that silence is like a drop of sand, one after the other, after the other, after the other, until a pile of these drops of nowness accumulate inside oneself and strip away again and again the attachment to the egoic self, creating the natural space for the divine presence, the golden light, the original goodness, for the presence of the I wherein God sees me, the same I, God sees me, I see myself, expands of natural order and infills oneself with the very presence of the divine itself. And the reason why meditation exists in all of the great religions, Jainism, Sikhism, Judaism, Islam, Christianity, Taoism, Zen, because they all have to do with breath control and thought control. And in the silence of the self, that's where the divine is found. And the practice of meditation rewires the brain so it gets easier and easier and easier, and you get better and better and better with years and years of practice. And then what it does is, by any name, create the space inside yourself to connect to that which you already are and remember your original self. And then heaven becomes here now. And that's what Jesus was trying to teach. Not heaven in the sky when you die, which is also true and what he was teaching, but his real message, and the message of almost all of the mystics I have ever studied, East and West, heaven here now.
If it's an objective to find heaven here now, talk about the notion of being on the other side as this, sort of universal being soul, choosing to come here in this tiny little vessel that we have, stripped of all of our capabilities and with a veil of forgetfulness so that we don't know who we are. And then many folk that have this entire life experience never remember who they are. Is it the objective of coming here to remember who you are, or is that just for a few, or is that the many, but there's a lot of folks not achieving it?
I would say because most people don't even know that it exists, it's not a universal goal. What's a universal goal here is love. Learning to love. Everybody loves. Animals love. If you can love people, that's enough. You don't need anything else other than that. But for me, it's my goal. In my first mystical out-of-body experience when I was 5, I learned that was my task. That's what I signed up for. Now, maybe that's not everybody else's task, but it's my job here in this lifetime is to channel as much light into my own self so that it can radiate of its own accord, doing its own thing as I live in the presence of it. Now, ultimately, the divine, the love, the light, the ineffable will always enfold back on itself. And so nothing is ever lost. No one is ever lost, because love loves, Ulysses, James Joyce, love loves to love love. The love is the divine nature loving itself, and it loves to love itself. And so nothing is ever lost. Is it our goal? I don't know. I can't speak for anybody. But I can speak for mystics. I can speak for a certain segment of the population. And our goal collectively is to be bearers of light, not for salvation, but to bring the light into the world so that people can see it. And maybe humanity can evolve at some point beyond its necessary tribal nature and egoic needs to bring a higher consciousness to this planet. But, we're not the only planet, and human beings are totally temporary. We've only been here a couple 100,000 years, and who knows, we probably won't be here forever. But my soul, if I'm going to try to accumulate treasure for anything, it's my soul. My soul is eternal. And that's why my focus is there.
Why would you, in that infinite light space on the other side, design this light? have an intention and a direction to come here and experience this?
That I don't know the answer to. All I know is what I learned when I was 5, that I made a deal to do that. I don't know why I chose that. And I don't even really know why it matters, frankly, because I am just a speck. In one of my mystical experiences, I experienced myself as the size of a micron in the existence of the time space universe of 13 billion years, and I am less than a mote, and I am of no consequence whatsoever. And so why it matters is beyond me. I just try to do my job. I'm a worker bee here, and I'm just working for the boss with a capital B, doing the best that I can.
Well, one day when we do get back to the other side permanently without a return trip, I guess we'll figure it all out then. It'll make perfect sense then why we came for this experience.
I may have even known when I was dead why I was coming back. But I don't remember that.
I have a feeling that's true. That is the case. You couldn't take it all back with you. Well, hey, that brings us to number 8. What changes when you start seeing challenges as part of a soul design curriculum rather than random suffering, kind of like what we were talking about?
A practical example is that when you have a localized, physicalized pain, if you bring your mind to that pain and bring your breath to that pain, you can rise above that pain and it doesn't hurt anymore. You can actually use your physical pain to help your spiritual life grow in your meditation. And that's true of grief. So there's basically 2 things that happen after you lose someone you love. Either you learn to love again, or you live in the bitterness and the wallowing of the suffering of the grief that lasts eternally. And I know that that's a dichotomy. I know I set that up as an opposite, but generally that's true. People who lose those that they love and suffer greatly, if they can learn to love again, a puppy dog, another person, themselves, the blue sky, it aids, the grief itself aids one in the growth of wisdom. If one stays in the pain, wisdom never comes.
Well said. Beautiful. Well, the last one, final question, number 9, is what do you feel would be the most loving thing Source could whisper to someone who's forgotten their connection to the divine?
Love that is so powerful. This energy presence that one single consonant of it, one vowel of it, one connection to it is enough to last a lifetime and transform a life completely. Because in that single consonant, in that single vowel, is the totality of the quality of the essence of the being of the divine love. It's always in its own state of oneness. If there's any whisper that would transform a life, it's the connection to the light itself. And that's why meditation matters if you're in pursuit. Because if you want that thing, there is a way to grow your soul toward it. But you can just have it happen to you as you're crossing the street, riding on the subway, in the moment of ecstasy, of orgasm, of eating a blueberry. It can come at any time, and we can't make it happen, but it will be transformative when it does. And the closest thing we have to it in life is utter selfless love.
Quite a whisper. It feels like your 2 NDEs, even your OBE, were both opportunities where you had access to the whisper. For everyone else, they may have their meditation practice, which gets them very close, but they can also connect with you. And maybe that's where we should go at this point is, what happened since all these years? You've got your website and your content and ways you're helping people. Let's talk about that for a minute.
I do a lot of counseling. My entire career as a clergy person, I did a lot of pastoral counseling, and even though I wasn't out of the NDE closet, I was always using my extrasensory perceptions to help people, and I still do that. I specialize in people who have had major transformative experiences, spiritual experiences, but I help lots of people in lots of different situations, practical and just living life, usually people who are in great suffering of some kind or another. But the most important thing I learned on the day that I came back, the first NDE, was that I could never put into words the light itself, what the message is itself, but I could be that. And so what I try to do in all my counseling experiences with people is to be present to the light within me so that maybe the light can be present to those who are with me. There's a scene in the Gospels where somebody says to Jesus, heal me, and Jesus heals him, and the guy says, thanks for healing me, and Jesus says, your faith is what made you whole. It's because the light inside ourselves sees the light inside of others, and then it communicates with each other. And that in that experience, there is what the Hinduism calls Shaktipat, which is the transfer of the divine energy occurs. It's not one way, it's an exchange. And what I'm always trying to do, I'm always trying to help people practically. I worked a lot in domestic violence. There's no point in trying to help somebody spiritually if they're in a situation where their life is in danger. You got to help them first. But really what I'm always trying to do is help them find the spark within themselves, because you don't need me or anybody else when the light begins to grow inside you. All you need is the light itself, and then to nurture that. It's like a little spark. You get that little spark going, you put a little steel wool on it, and then you put a little bit of tinder on it, and you put a little kindling on it, and you build this thing into a flame. It's already who you are. And if you can find this thing inside yourself and find tools to protect that flame and grow that flame, you have everything you need. And then you just share what you got. And it doesn't fix everything. It's not going to... I spent a lot of time around sick people, dying people, ill health people. Miracles do happen. I know they do. But the real miracle happens, the healing of the self and the relationship to the soul. That's where it's really at, because that thing is transformative permanently.
Okay, so that's where you focus on helping folks, even if they're on a course of ailment and they're passing away, you can still help them through that transition, I would imagine. And it's interesting, you registered the domain peterpanagore.love as your website.
Yeah, because love is the closest word that I can come to, inaccurate as it is, to what the unconditional love I experienced on the other side.
Beautiful. Several years ago, I also registered the domain bradpeterson.love. I just haven't used it yet for a website or email.
You're the only other person I've ever met who's ever done it.
Is that right? You're the only person I've ever met that's ever done it too. I thought that was amazing when I saw your URL.
I am impressed. Count me as impressed.
Equal on this side as well. Well, hey, Peter, thank you. Now, do you have any sort of final message that you like to share? Everything that we covered has been amazing, but you have way too much to cover in one setting. And I know we can't cover it all, but is there anything we didn't cover or something you want to share as we close this out?
Sure. It's what the Beatles sang. All you need is love. That's all you really need. You don't need meditation. You don't need a mystical experience. You don't need a near-death experience. All you need to do is to love. And that love is complicated. Sometimes loving one person means hurting another, but the love really matters. And love is an action. Love is kindness, it's charity, it's generosity, it's honesty, it's truthfulness, it's helpfulness, it's caring, it's self-sacrifice. It's not being a doormat. It's not allowing yourself to be abused. It's courageous, it's strong, it's capable. But really all we need is love. And that's what happens when a mother gives birth to a baby, and in the moment of the birth, there is there's an umbilical cord, a physical attachment, but that physical attachment is magnified by the love of the instantaneous love of that mother for that baby, and that baby for that mother. That bond is eternal. And I'll tell you, I've seen many spouses who've lost other spouses after decades of love and relationship, and I'll tell you that love never dies. Love is eternal nature itself, and love carries from this life to the next life, and on it goes. And so if there's a single treasure in life, it's love.
So the Beatles had it figured out, huh? All you need is love.
Totally.
Well, hey, thank you, Peter. And, Peter reminds us that even after glimpsing heaven, the real work begins back here, in the body, in the pain, in the beauty, and in the stillness. And his story is a call not just to believe, but to become a living embodiment of the divine love. So thank you, Peter. Appreciate your time and your sharing today.
Thanks for having me, Brad. Peace to all of you in the audience, and I'm at peterpanagore.love. Reach out, say hi.
peterpanagore.love. I love that. I'm going to have to activate mine now too. bradpeters.love. To our listeners, if Peter's story moved you, be sure to like, subscribe, and share. And let us know in the comments. If this episode spoke to your heart, share it with someone who might need a little light today. And until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and go beyond the illusion to discover your true self. Take care, everyone, and bye for now.